The chance to shape your future is here. Learn and connect with exciting new opportunities. Are you ready for the next step?
Over to you, Stefan.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everyone. Just bear with me. I'll just share my screen. Okay, yeah, hi, good afternoon. Welcome to this afternoon's Emerging Tech Fest session on a hydrogen economy, fuel for the future. My name's Stefan Eldred. I'm a Knowledge Transfer Manager at KTN and also leading on our Hydrogen Economy Innovation Network. Just a couple of basic housekeeping things. It should be fairly straightforward. So most of you should have come in through something called the hub, in which case you will be muted and we can't see you, unfortunately. A few people have come in on the Zoom link. So for those not speaking, please keep your cameras off and yourself muted. Those presenting, you can see a few of us now, but once we start presenting, it'll just be the speaker that is able to speak and has the camera on. Please use the Q&A. You should have a Q&A or a chat box for submitting questions. And I think there should be two. So Q&A for questions and a chat box if you want to do a little bit of networking. And I suppose it's important to say this is being recorded as well. So bear that in mind.
Sorry, Steph, no, you can't interact with each other. It's only questions posed through the hub and then I will post them to you. So there's no interaction other than direct messaging people on the...
Cool, sorry, fair play. Okay, just stick with Q&A, just questions then for us. If you can just put those in the box and we will pick those up at our session towards the end. So in terms of the agenda, I'll try not to waste too much time waffling on at the start, but I'm going to give you a bit of an intro to KTN's Hydrogen Innovation Network, then pass over to Guto, who'll talk about a number of things, but you probably know him through Hi Cymru. John Maddy will talk about the activities from the Hydrogen Centre in South Wales. We've got Dr. Charlie Dunhill from Rice, and then Ron Loveland from Welsh Government is going to just introduce a short panel session. So again, when your questions, you will be able to, we will see those come through and we'll be able to pose those at that session towards the end. We've only got an hour, so time's quite tight, and I'm going to crack on. So just a bit of context, and I'm conscious you'll probably see this slide a couple of times today. And also there's people on this call who are far more qualified to talk about it than me. I guess the point is this came out just last week. So Welsh Government commissioned Element Energy to build on the hydrogen pathway work and have released this consultation document. I think the key thing for me was that on the Hydrogen Reference Group call last week, John Howells just made it really clear that, you know, this is a truly open consultation. So there's no hidden agenda. They want comments on it. They want people's thoughts about how Wales move forwards in the hydrogen energy sector, which was just really powerful to hear, really positive, and you know, stands Wales in good stead to move forwards on that journey. I suppose wider than Wales, hydrogen's obviously just playing a really sort of hot topic role at the moment, and it feels different over the past 18 months to perhaps, you know, previously in the past 10 years or so. It really is, you know, high up on the agenda. It was, you know, number 2 on the Prime Minister's 10-point plan. BEIS have committed to this strategy. We have been hearing about that a little bit at the back end of last year, but they have committed to this strategy sometimes early in 21. Haven't got a lot to talk about on funding today, but there's a lot going on. There's a net zero hydrogen fund, which is due to be rolled out in spring, which we're talking about 240 million there, and the Net Zero Innovation Fund, which, while that's not just hydrogen, hydrogen does feature strongly, and that's, you know, key priority with $1 billion there. Not going into detail on these charts, but the point being, they both come from the Committee on Climate Change, but the one on the right hand side just highlights that, you know, hydrogen is going to play a key part across, well, certainly most sectors, if not every sector. We're not saying it's the be all and end all. It's not about one solution and that's all, but it's going to feature highly. It's a key part of it, you know, our journey to net zero to 2050. And the same with the one down on the left hand side. It's just in this future scenario, hydrogen, you know, plays a key role in it. If you look, the green part on the bar chart, that's hydrogen on the bottom, and obviously in 2019 it doesn't feature that highly. So it's a key part on the agenda. Just this helps. This slide just helps to show that, you know, the whole world of hydrogen, the landscape, but also helps us in terms of where we're going with the innovation network. So I think in our discussions, when we first started on our journey with the innovation network sort of last summer, we were speaking to a lot of key stakeholders. So UK Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Association, we join in on the reference group in Wales, the Scottish Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Association up there, BEIS, Innovate UK, and there's a lot going on around the production side of things, and a lot going on around how we move forward to green or clean hydrogen production at scale. To start with, it was kind of pat ourselves on the back. We've got the same agenda. That's great. That's where we want to move to. But actually, when we step back, we felt that, are we not duplicating effort here? We want to be able to add value. We want to do something different. And actually, these guys down on the right-hand side, so a lot of the end sector uses, emerging sectors, they'll all talk about hydrogen featuring on their, well, they'll all have decarbonisation plans and hydrogen will feature on those. But when you get into the detail, there's often not a lot behind that in terms of what that looks like. And so where we want to come in is to help those end sectors, end uses, emerging end users on what hydrogen can look like for them going forwards. So I'm conscious of time, but I think the key part of this is our purpose. It's this bit in the middle about, we want to help with what are the challenges to enabling local clean hydrogen uptake at scale, and then looking for solutions, innovative solutions to those challenges. And so as part of that, there's this initial step, which is about kind of, yeah, we're not ignoring production. We need to understand through capability mapping what's the current state of play in the UK, a bit like a resume of the UK's strengths and weaknesses for new entrants. But then we want to move into what are those challenges holding back deployment, and then using something called Innovation Exchange, which we can do a sales pitch another day, but a great platform we have for trying to identify novel solutions. So this isn't a sales pitch, but the point is getting involved where we really want to keep people aware of the hydrogen landscape. I mean, we launched, it's actually 2 weeks ago now, and we had 600 people who signed up, and then I think 370 people live on the day. So a lot of people who are really interested, and you know, we'll keep those up to date. Next steps, there's a lot going on, to be honest. So in the background, we're doing this capability mapping. We've actually got 2 workshops which are slightly off topic, but through the Innovation Network. So one is with EPSRC and Royce Institute on the material side of hydrogen. That's coming up pretty soon at the end of February. We're then the bit where I say off topic, so hydrogen blending standards. So working with our Canadian friends on a couple of webinars in March around that side of things. And then we'll be moving into some end sector focus workshops. We're expecting, so don't hold me to this, but we're expecting the first one probably to be on defence, so challenges in defence around hydrogen, and one around agri-construction, and then we can move on to identifying solutions for those challenges. I've got to be careful here because I've got to hold myself to account on the time. We have a couple of other innovation networks that may be of interest and people are speaking about in Emerging Tech Fest elsewhere. So battery systems and ports and harbours. There's quite a bit of funding, as I mentioned before, but IETF, which is open to England, Wales and Northern Ireland, phase 2 is coming out shortly, and hydrogen fuel switching is can be part of that. And there we go, I was ahead of time. Sorry, Guto, I stole your thunder there, but I'm just now I'm gonna stop sharing. We're gonna move over to Guto, who's going to talk more about High Cymru. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Stefan. I'll just bring up my slides. There we go. Okay, can you see that? Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Thank you, Stefan. Yeah, diolch yn fawr, pnawn da I bawb. Thank you for the opportunity to give a quick introduction to High Cymru, the newish Wales Hydrogen Trade Association. There's a video link there, which gives a bit more background, but I can share that with you via Stefan. Yeah, we have core supporting organizations and linked there. The whole idea really is to network, to advance with others the hydrogen economy in Wales, and the timing for doing that is exceptional given all the backdrop that Stefan's introduced. We'll come to later with the other speakers and the Welsh Government's new development pathway as well. So you know, regions, countries across the world have these trade associations, so it was high time that Wales had one as well. I'll go quickly through these. There's technology suppliers in the form of 2G, sustainability consultants, recruitment agencies, research and manufacturing excellence, engineering consultancies, industrial groups, lawyers, utilities, water, gas and electricity, social housing, community enterprises, energy developers, manufacturers and power generators as well. So it's a broad range of organizations who are involved currently, and we're looking to step that up now over the next few weeks and months to capture the momentum into 2021. My role, I should have said, is coordinator of High Cymru, of the Trade Association, as we look to enhance our activities into 2021. And I'm just going to give a quick run through the context within Wales, which will be familiar, but there's a good reasons for doing this now based on the resource capability. This shows the map of the wind resource on land and offshore, so that we know the resources are there, but we're in a good place, literally, the location of Wales, given large markets internally, resources to our left and bigger markets to our right as well. So there's a good context in terms of the resource capability, as well as community interest, you know, and I don't just mean rural communities there, but industrial communities, towns and cities as well. There's a good scale of opportunity in terms of the community developments and the place-based approach, which can further project development within Wales. The infrastructure, you know, by default or design, really, you know, these are the yellow pipes, the Wales and West Utilities pipes, which have gone in across Wales. There's a programme running for several years. This is a street in Cardiff. My own street has had these yellow pipes and we barely noticed, you know. It was the old pipes were taken out and the yellow pipes, plastic pipes were put in, ostensibly because of safety, but they happen to be hydrogen ready. So there is a large asset which is being rolled out, which is hydrogen ready. And which can dovetail, which can couple with the power networks as well. Research and skills, of course, you know, I'll concede ground to John and Charlie here, who've got excellence there in Southwest Wales, but this is Northeast Wales as well, AMRC Cymru's Advanced Manufacturing Centre, which is on Airbus's site, and you've got Toyota nearby, Uniper as well. And these are all big companies as well as research skills, local SMEs as well, who could form a big part of the hydrogen economy in that part of the world and connecting across Wales as well. And the evidence is there now, really, isn't it? You know, a year or two ago, myself and others would have been speaking at events like this, and we would have been trying to make the case for hydrogen. But I think the case has been made and almost agreed now in terms of its a key part of net zero. It's just a question of what scale, green, blue, other colors, and what is the size of the prize, really, for countries like Wales in cooperation with others. I mean, this was a landmark report as far as I was concerned. It mapped out the resource potential across the UK in terms of hydrogen, green hydrogen potential. But I think they came to a conclusion that there's over 2 times enough resource potential, which was available, not the total resource, but this was practical resource, 2 times the entire UK energy needs from the offshore wind resource coupled with hydrogen. So there's vast resource potential out there. And it'd be interesting to see whether we could look at a similar exercise mapping out the resources around Wales's coasts. Manufacturing is here, of course, with River Semple's car, looking for vans as well. They're in an investment round currently. So the capability in terms of innovation is here, not just River Semple, but others as well. And it was in that context that, yeah, we launched nearly a year ago now, just before lockdown. Good group of people together. Minister Lee Walters spoke at that event. I think in the afternoon at the Senedd, at the Welsh Parliament, a motion was passed, which was looking to develop a strategy of sorts within Wales on hydrogen. And lo and behold, here we are a year later, the Welsh Government's published its pathway for consultation, which I'm sure we'll discuss later. So it's been a very good time to do this in terms of the context of the political angle, as well as the people and partnerships which can be forged in Wales and elsewhere. I'll just rattle through these final few slides. You know, we know the kind of technologies and the deployments. Are we going to start with transport, large transports? This perhaps mirrors the findings of the Welsh Government exercise and is common with other parts of the world as well. This is perhaps the premium for hydrogen in terms of developing the value chain, but there are so many other markets extending to, of course, power and heat alone through the gas networks, and coupling with those technologies, whether they're fuel cells, engines, and as Stefan said, it's not all about hydrogen, of course, but it's coupling with heat pumps as well. But there's this universal application of hydrogen, which is very attractive, extending to industry as well. I will not talk too much about that. I'm sure John will cover that with the South Wales Industrial Cluster. But here's a couple of examples of projects which are developing in Wales, by no means comprehensive. One of the activities High Cymru is doing is mapping the activities, building on the Welsh Government's work and working closely with Element Energy to try and basically show what's happening in Wales and see if we can have some cooperation between them and provide a prospectus for others, perhaps as investment partners as well. What I'm involved with as a consultant is the Holyhead Hydrogen Hub. We've just appointed a team of consultants there to do the detailed design and engineering for a physical hub at Holyhead to provide hydrogen for a captive fleet of vehicles to begin with, but obviously looking at the scale-up opportunities from those offshore marine resources, including tidal and wind. The next one is the South Wales Industrial Cluster. John, I'm pretty sure you might be talking about that, so I'll leave that for now. But again, it shows the range of activities across South Wales. And then there's the Milford Haven Energy Kingdom, UK's largest energy port, I think, oil and gas currently, but an obvious candidate for transforming that into hydrogen and renewables, offshore renewable electricity as well, based on the existing assets which are there. Couple of more. Yeah, learning from others. This is a schematic of what's happening at Humberside on the east coast of England with large gigawatt scale green hydrogen potential, coupling with industry. So there's lessons to be learned from there, as well as the Netherlands and many, many other countries as well, who are perhaps ahead of us in terms of the deployments, but we can be fast followers, catch up, and maybe even advance some measures in before some other parts of the world. But there's job opportunities, of course. This is Denmark, 53,000 jobs in Denmark in hydrogen and related technologies by 2030, they've estimated. So that's going to be a key part of this. the skills developments which is needed to meet the growing demand. And this is the slide which Stefan showed as well. This is the pathway from the Welsh Government, which is excellent. You know, a year ago, I guess, Ron, correct me if I'm wrong, could have been a blank sheet of paper, but it shows how much things have advanced in that short space of time. And it mirrors other kind of pathways, yeah, in terms of transport, but also heat and industry, perhaps extending to agriculture as well, and developing green hydrogen supply chains and looking at the blue hydrogen route with carbon capture and storage. So many things can be done, but it'll be important, I think, to concentrate on doing a few things well, but as a platform for scale up over these next few months and years. That's it from me, Stefan, if that's okay. There's, you know, the website details and our Twitter handle there. But yeah, looking forward to the discussion for the rest of the session. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Guto. Really exciting to hear how much is going on, and the fact that it's not just perhaps the bigger conurbations in Wales, you know, talking about Holyhead up there is really exciting. Okay, John, are you ready to speak? Yeah, there we are. So take it away, John. Thank you.
Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen. I've done a whole presentation before where I wasn't sharing my screen properly. So,
John, we can't see your screen at the moment. No, we can just see yourself.
Right, that's good. Bear with me. Share. There we are. Okay. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. I'm John Maddy. I'm the director of the University of South Wales Hydrogen R&D Centre, and I'm here representing some of the research work that we're conducting. I won't be able to go into all of it. I haven't got time to cover all of it, so I'll give you a sort of broad brush sweep of what we're doing and how it fits with the challenges that Guto has outlined on previously. Just a little bit about us. We're a multidisciplinary research centre. We've got a lot of activities looking at major energy challenges, but a strong focus on hydrogen, and have had that focus on hydrogen for many decades. And we're made up of a mix of scientists and engineers. Our team is currently 45 strong, which is probably one of the largest hydrogen R&D groups in the UK. And we're made up of people that have come from an purely academic background, but people like myself that have come through industry as well. So we bring that experience to the activity. We've got labs at Glyntaff, which the focus of which is slightly earlier stage technology, and then the Baglan Hydrogen Centre that I'm sat at the moment. And in all cases, though, our focus is collaborative R&D, and it has a very strong industrial focus. I'm going to give some context. Others have done that already to a certain extent, so apologies if I'm covering ground that's already been done. But I think it's quite exciting within the recently published Energy White Paper. I've just picked out some things that some of you may have seen already, but and have been touched on earlier. But effectively, the next step is that the UK is going to produce a hydrogen strategy in a matter of weeks rather than months now. I work with the UK Hydrogen Advisory Council to support BEIS in that production, and there are a series of subgroups, working groups for that advisory council, looking at things like business models, deployment plans, and so on. And all that will feature in the hydrogen strategy that will appear shortly. The headline target for this decade is that the UK is looking to develop 5 gigawatts of low carbon hydrogen production capacity by 2030. It's interesting because Scotland has effectively said, well, we'll do that as well. So Scotland as a whole is saying that over the same timescale it will develop 5 gigawatts of capacity. And so in Wales we need to be looking at similarly challenging, similarly ambitious targets in that sense. As already mentioned, I think Steph mentioned earlier that there's, amongst other funds, there's the Net Zero Hydrogen Fund, and that is looking to invest up to 240 million. I think I'm going to pick out perhaps is just one quote there. I mean, the aim really is to establish the UK as a world leader in deployment of carbon capture, utilization, storage, and clean hydrogen, supporting up to 60,000 jobs by 2030. So, you know, there's a strong jobs premium with hydrogen. I think we should reflect on that. I'm not going to spend a great deal of time on this because others already have and in future will cover this. What I do have is the web link. This work is important. It's important to set the context in Wales. So from that point of view, the more responses, the more considered responses that Welsh Government receive on this consultation, the better. The good thing is that, you know, real projects are being talked about and invested in now. So we should see something like that, plan being realised over the next decade. So I'm going to turn to our activities specifically and a little bit more of a deeper dive. One of the activities that we're involved with and have been involved with for a number of years is the promotion, development of electrolysis for water splitting, and that covers alkaline electrolysis, solid oxide, and PEM electrolysis. A strong element of that has been our work with industrial partners, and for many years we've been working with ITM Power on the development of their PEM electrolyzers. What I'm trying to show here is the timeline. Effectively, back in 2011, we worked with ITM, and the scale at that point was 12 kilowatts. That was the first sale for ITM Power, and that's here at the Hydrogen Centre at Baglan. But over the decade, we've now had a 2,000 times scale increase in PEM electrolysis. So 2019, the REFINE project was then the largest PEM electrolyzer at 10 megawatts. ITM have just announced the sale of a 24 megawatt electrolyzer, PEM electrolyzer to Linde. And with that, and I guess what you can see is the sort of purple line coming down, you know, there's a reduction in the capital cost of PEM electrolysis, and there's a commensurate, or certainly there's some improvement through that period of the efficiency of the technology as well. And just to put that in context, we're looking at a potential green hydrogen demand in the UK of around about 30 terawatt hours by 2035, or a capacity of 3.8 gigawatts. We work in hydrogen transport. We've been doing a lot of work in hydrogen transport for quite some time. We installed Wales' first hydrogen refueling station back in 2009, and that's still working here at Baglan. And we're currently looking to further enhance that project through a link to the new Swansea Bay Technology Centre, which will significantly increase the capacity and the diversity of vehicles that are operating from here. We've had direct involvement in 5 other hydrogen refueling stations, some in Wales, others in the rest of the UK, and we're in planning or working with partners on the development of more hydrogen refueling stations. Just as an aside, we're also working with partners on rail and aerospace opportunities in hydrogen, and I won't really have time to go into those. But just again, as an example of some of the work that we do, we've worked with River Simple and Pressreg, JRE Precision Pressreg, to work on high pressure hydrogen components for integration within hydrogen vehicles. And the idea being that if we can reduce the weight, minimize the complexity of the componentry, then essentially that's both a performance and a safety enhancement. And so whilst that was a specific project, we're continuing to work particularly with Pressreg on developing their regulators so that they can get EC79 approval for integration in hydrogen vehicles moving forward. So I'm going to switch tack now and talk a little bit about our work on industrial decarbonisation. And effectively here we're looking at recovery of hydrogen, separation and purification, and compression. And our focus has been largely on recovery of hydrogen from steelworks gases. And in this case, we're talking about high volume, low cost hydrogen, potentially over 200,000 tonnes per year of hydrogen from Tata's Port Talbot Steelworks, and that could be with CO2 capture at a very low cost. Our work is focused on some areas of that, including looking at advanced water gas shift that maximizes the hydrogen production, looking at standard PSA, but then combining that with electrochemical purification, which is more novel. And what I've got is some pictures of the PSA electrochemical separation and compression system that we have at Baglan, which again is pushing forward on efficiency and performance of hydrogen separation and compression, so that you can get to fuel cell purity and vehicle pressures in that case. Very briefly, another bit of work that we're doing with Tata Steel is looking at the future of steel making, so replacing coke with hydrogen as the main reductant, and with that looking at a stage-wise plan to fully decarbonize steel making, which would be quite significant if we can achieve that. And finally, I'm going to share some of the work that we're doing. I'm the academic lead for the South Wales Industrial Cluster, and we've now worked over a very brief period in time, less than 18 months really of concerted effort. We've drawn together a massive number of partners, major industrial partners, to start looking at real projects to decarbonise industry in South Wales. And the prize is there in the red box at the top. We're looking to eliminate 16 million tonnes a year of carbon dioxide emissions. And through that, we've been recently awarded Industrial Decarbonisation Cluster Plan project. We're imminently awaiting on a decision on a next phase major deployment project, which covers a number of the partners there. We've got a number of other sort of projects generated, particularly through the Transforming Foundation Industries programme. Effectively, that's a whistle-stop tour of our activity. Love to spend more and go into more detail with that. If anyone's interested, my contact details are on that slide there, and more than happy to go through that in a lot more detail. Thank you.
Great, thanks, John. Yeah, obviously a huge amount of work going on and some great names in that last slide on the industrial cluster. So, Charlie, if you're ready to take it away and talk about your work with rice. Are you there, Charlie? Here we go.
I'm just here.
Brilliant.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, all good, yeah.
You can hear me, great, excellent, and you can see my slides. Fantastic. Well, good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Charlie Dunhill from Swansea University. I run a relatively small hydrogen research group here. We've got about 12 members in the group, so it's a bit smaller, but we work next door to John Maddy and all the stuff that he's been telling us about. One of the projects that we work together on is the RICE project. And I thought I would tell you a little bit about my contribution to the RICE project and the activities that are going on there. Just to put things into this sort of basic context, that's the beginning of the RICE project. So the context here is that we're trying to reduce industrial carbon emissions. Big picture is obviously 2050 net zero. Interestingly, as we've already heard, South Wales is uniquely positioned for this because we've got one of the biggest emitters in the UK, certainly the biggest emitter in Wales, with 40% of the total CO2 coming out of the steel plant. So it's a really, really big challenge, and one that we are trying to do through a number of technologies, but primarily for me through hydrogen. So the solutions really is to stop the emissions or close the industry, which we obviously don't want to do, reduce the emissions, looking at sequestration and utilization and all the rest of it. One of the things that I'm very keen on is therefore the swapping out of fuels for hydrogen, which brings me to my favorite equation here, which is of course water plus green energy goes to hydrogen and oxygen. And that is what we are trying to do. So we can take multiple energy feeds of green energy. We can use alkaline electrolysis, and we've got low cost, high efficiency electrolyzers, and we can take the hydrogen and put it into industry. And indeed, we can use the water, the oxygen as well to clean water or go into an oxygen production system. Really what we're interested in here is either fuel switching or actually converting low cost energy into a higher priced commodity. So hydrogen traditionally suffers from the fact that it's one of the very few commodities that actually competes with its own feedstock. So by this, what I mean is that hydrogen produced from natural gas can never actually be cheaper than the natural gas in the first place, both economically and energetically. And likewise, hydrogen produced from green energy cannot be cheaper than the green energy itself. So part of getting lots of high quality green hydrogen at a low cost is going to actually involve getting some green energy at a low cost. And that's what we're really interested in through this. So we've got two pilot projects going. One is on the Hanson site. And here we have a very simple setup. I'll show you a picture of the container in a minute. But what we've got is we've got some relatively low tech technology. It's all enclosed in a 10-foot shipping container. We've got an electrolyzer at the bottom, which is fed by a large tank of electrolyte. It produces hydrogen and oxygen. It runs at around 24 volts and simply produces the hydrogen and the oxygen. The two things are separated out, and then the hydrogen can be sent off to the gas burners. And the whole thing works very economically, but at low pressures and varying energy inputs. So this photo here is now the Hanson plant, and we've got a nice little wind tunnel as the wind powers through here. We've got some solar panels on the end of a shipping container. All of the equipment in the shipping container is shown here. We tried putting some little wind turbines on the top, but they didn't work very well. So we've now actually got a wind turbine on the top of the silo, which again, I'll show you in a second. Inside the tank, we've got our electrolyzer, which is this little green box down here, our large tank of electrolyte. We've got the oxygen coming through on the blue, and we've got the hydrogen coming in on the red. And we can meter all the energy coming in, the energy going out, including the amounts of gases. Looking at the Hanson site still, so we've now got a wind turbine, which is right up the very, very top of the cement silo, and that's running at about 3 kilowatts. And with a little bit of solar and a 3 kilowatt wind turbine, we're producing about 1,000 liters of hydrogen a day. It's not a lot industrially, but the concept is there that we can actually take the hydrogen from renewable energy and feed it into their burners to offset their natural gas. We went for a similar setup at the Valley site. So the Valley site is a nickel refinery in Clydach. And here they actually use hydrogen as a chemical feedstock. So you can see here we've got these two amazingly large hydrogen tanks that sit there and absolutely dwarf my tiny little 20-foot shipping container down the bottom. But again, we're working on a similar process. We're going to take some renewable energy, produce hydrogen oxygen on site, and feed it into the hydrogen tank as a chemical feedstock rather than a substitute to natural gas. On this occasion also, they're quite interested in the value of the oxygen. So hopefully at a later stage, once we're up and running, it'll be the oxygen as well that actually has the higher value. So this is the photograph from inside the Valley setup. And you can see this is Valley rather than Hanson because my hydrogen now comes out on the right rather than on my left, which differentiates the two in the photograph, but it doesn't actually matter either way around. So again, you've got your electrolyzer down here. We've got a little bit of pumping equipment, and we've got the hydrogen and the oxygen feeds that come off. What's quite unique about these electrolyzers is they're designed to be relatively simple. So one of my long-term goals is to actually have these type setups out in Africa, where you don't want to have expensive pumps, you don't want to have computers running things, you want things to be running off gravity, and you want to have what's known as frugal technology that just goes out and works. So yeah, so that's one of my other little projects going, but this is the Valley setup and we have yet to turn this on, but hopefully in the next couple of weeks, it'll be turned on. The real challenge that I've found working with these two industries, as wonderful as they are helping us out, is getting all of the safety standards, the hazard operations, and all of that up and running has been the real challenge. So actually moving from a bench type setup in a lab into industry has been really quite challenging, but it's been good. Okay, so looking at a little bit of emerging technology coming out of the lab. Oh, sorry. We're looking at some zero gap. The zero gap technology is all about taking alkaline towards where PEM tends to be at the moment, but we can go for much higher efficiencies and much lower cost, so we get all the benefits of both. So we are working with PhD students trying to get zero gap technology going for the alkaline system. The other interesting thing that we're looking at is heat to hydrogen. So we want to actually take waste heat from industry and be able to convert that into an electrical feed that will actually run our electrolyzers. This, of course, means that the cost of that initial energy that you're producing the hydrogen from is actually ridiculously low or even free, which means that the hydrogen output can be very, very low cost. And some of the technology that we're looking at here involves making our own thermoelectric devices and copper pellets. So that's really what we've been up to. And I'm actually running a minute early, but I will end my talk there. Happy to answer any questions later on. And I believe I'm handing over back to Stefan.
That's fine, Charlie. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. I think we're actually just going to go over to Ron, just to say a couple of words. You okay, Ron?
Thank you, Stefan. I'll just say a few words and then we go into a 15-minute question and answer session. Clearly, Stefan has described the big picture. That's now been filled in by our three notable Wales experts. I think all I would add to that is this thing that's often forgotten, which is we're on a natural journey with hydrogen from coal and oil, which are high carbon forms of energy fuels, to methane, which is a medium energy fuel, through to hydrogen, which is zero energy fuel. People have mentioned the consultation that we've just issued as the Welsh Government on the draft pathway. As Stefan said, I think right at the beginning, this is not us saying what we think should happen, but asking people, is this the way forward? And we may get more into that. This is one of the diagrams from that consultation paper, which I just showed to emphasize we are as interested in the hydrogen end use side as in the hydrogen production side. And that consultation is open until the April the 9th. So coming to the questions then, looking at the chat box. Right, going back the opposite way. First question, what options are there for SME involvement in SWIC? It looks very focused on larger businesses. John, do you want to take that?
Yeah, certainly. So you're quite right, or whoever posed the question, quite right in that there's been a general focus on larger industries, and the idea behind that is that we've effectively started with the largest emissions and tried to work backwards, I suppose, is the way that I would put it, in setting up SWIC initially. But it is, as I say, a relatively new organization. We've grown dramatically over the last 18 months. It still is a relatively informal organization, but we're working collaboratively across several sectors with often occasionally with competing partners that are collaborating on joint projects because the goal of decarbonisation is so important. In terms of widening out to SMEs, so certainly there's no exclusion in that sense, and by all means get in touch with myself to talk about that. As someone else pointed out, there's a session this time tomorrow, 2:15. Chris Williams is giving a session on SWIC in more detail. So if you've got the opportunity to join that, then that's good. And I just mentioned I'm also doing some work with Birmingham University and the Black Country cluster. So it's a sort of collaboration between industrial clusters, looking at the role of SMEs in broader decarbonisation. And okay, that's an academic piece of work, but we'll be looking for interested parties that can contribute to the whole decarbonisation journey.
Thank you, John. I mean, I would just add to that I think, from what I understand of SWIC, a lot of SMEs will be involved in supply chain work for many of the larger companies, and should, I think, be considered as part of the ecosystem. Another question. Sorry, ask you, John.
No, so absolutely. You know, we're at the start of a journey, and it's such a journey that we're going to have to grow and develop those supply chains significantly. Net zero is one thing. Net zero with economic growth is the other, and I think that's what we should be looking for.
I think the next one is also for you, John. The question is, assume it is too early to know the scope from the Net Zero Hydrogen Fund. Since you sit on the Hydrogen Advisory Council, any comment on that question?
Yeah, so there have been some some tasters as to what might appear, and you can read between the lines, but essentially I think we're going to see the details of the fund emerge alongside and after the publication of the UK's hydrogen strategy. So we'll see specific calls and programs for people to be engaged with. You'll note from the white paper that the timeline is up to 24-25, so it'll be a broad program of activities over that period. So a little wait, but you should see something soon.
Okay. I was just gonna jump in there myself, Ron, just to say that we had Rita Wadey from Bayes presenting at our Innovation Network launch. So I don't think I'm saying anything politically incorrect to say, you know, the words she just used were just, you know, very high level around, you know, it's all about deploying production capacity and encouraging private sector investment in that space. So like you say, John, I'm sure there'll be a lot more detail to come, but just those were the words that she used. Yeah.
And hopefully Rita's strategy will appear within the next couple of months, and we'll see more. I think the next question is really for Charlie and Guta. Is what are Wales doing to help in the growing need for skills to support the deployment of hydrogen? And I think put it first to Charlie, because he not only clearly is interested from the university perspective, but Charlie also does an awful lot of work in engaging the public to explain what the hydrogen word actually might mean. Charlie?
So, yes, thank you very much. So the universities have got a massive drive for PhDs and master's places, as well as undergraduate courses that are all interested in the renewable energy in general, of which there's quite a lot of hydrogen coming through. I actually run a PhD and master's program called Energy Innovation, which involves quite a lot of hydrogen and stuff. So in terms of recruitment and training, we have an awful lot going on in all the universities, not just Swansea, but Uni South Wales do a huge amount, as does Cardiff. In terms of outreach, we've got an outreach program called the Hydrogen Bike, where people can actually jump onto an exercise bike and produce hydrogen in their own hydrogen in real time, and then experience their own hydrogen flame. And we do an awful lot of outreach. Obviously, with COVID issues, we've had to scale those back. But we do quite a lot of that, and we used to do an awful lot of that. In fact, in 2 days' time, I'm giving a conference from the Hydrogen Bike in the setup currently in Swansea Centre. So there's an awful lot of that going as well. But an awful lot of it is the catch-22, where general members of the public don't use hydrogen, so they can't buy it, and they can't buy it because they don't use it. So bringing the members of the public through and the actual end users and the stakeholders through is really important at this stage.
Thank you, Charlie, and thank you for all your work in that field. Good. Anything you want to add on the skills front?
Yeah, thank you, Ron. Yeah, I agree with what Charlie said, and it also links with what John was said. I think you do have a pathway, I think, and connections between the universities and the colleges of further education as well. You know, there's a they may not be doing in the FE colleges, they may not be training in terms of hydrogen yet. It may not say that on the box, but they're training in a lot of the skills which can be applied to the hydrogen economy. And I'd extend that to SMEs as well, and other companies in Wales. And we've got a growing list of people who are expressions of interest in joining High Cymru in the trade association. And I'm glad to say that a lot of them are based in Wales and are SMEs who are maybe not in the hydrogen industry yet, but they're coming from an oil and gas background, for example. They've got energy interests. They've got planning interests as well. There's a broad range of skills which can be part of this transition to hydrogen. So I think there was a parallel question, wasn't there? How big is the supply chain within Wales? I'd say it's not a very big hydrogen supply chain currently. It's not what it's called, but there's a very big supply chain which can transition towards being a hydrogen supply chain.
And
Right.
sorry to jump in, Ron, but did you have a couple of comments just to follow on from that, John?
Yeah, just to highlight the emergence of the Green Jobs Task Force. That's just emerged, again, from UK government, but already there's a number of consultations and engagement through the Green Jobs Task Force. And I think that will play a part. Within SWIC especially, one of the tasks that we've got within some of the projects that I mentioned is to identify skills, work with, particularly with industry partners, to identify the skills gap. And then both HE, and the thing I'd say is for all of the HE colleagues on the call, we've got direct and formal links with a lot of FE colleges. So training at levels from PhD through talk degrees to general upskilling is still part of the academic activity. A lot more will develop, a lot more programs will develop, and we'll see that over the next few years, and would welcome help and assistance and identification of the needs in that respect as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, John. Final question, I think, for you all, which is a very broad question, which is, where will emerging tech play a role within the hydrogen economy? The person goes on to say, I've read some potentially scary stuff around glucose and enzymatic biofuel cells. How far away are these from becoming a reality? Can I start with you, John, with some of the work you've got up in Pontypridd?
Yeah, so I'm not an expert on biological fuel cells, microbial fuel cells, but a lot of my colleagues are. Professor Richard Dinsdale has a long-term program looking at leading on microbial fuel cells. Yeah, there's some steps to overcome for them to be a reality, but essentially what they'll be doing is turning waste, particularly low-grade waste waters, directly into electricity. Yeah, it's an emerging technology. I'm not quite sure what the scary stuff is, but it is a reality. It's very early TRL at this stage, but is developing fast.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Richard, because I mean, he's in a very interesting position, isn't he? If I understand it, he's got a 10-year roving brief to do whatever he likes.
Yeah, lucky him.
In that space. Yeah, Charlie, anything to add on the tech play role?
All I would say is unfortunately, I don't know much about the microbial fuel cell stuff. But I think to answer the first part of that question about emerging tech, I think there's a huge opportunity at the moment for emerging tech in hydrogen and in renewable energy, simply because it's the place to be at the moment and it's developing so fast. In many cases, we know what the problems are, and therefore we can look at the solutions. But I have a feeling that in the next few years, we're going to discover new problems and new questions that need answering, and we'll need the emerging tech for it. So I think there's a massive opportunity for emerging tech, specifically in hydrogen, but definitely all around the hydrogen ecosphere.
Thank you, Charlie. And good. Before you answer that question, there is a final question which fits very nicely into something where you have views. The question is, as has been mentioned by the panel, very few of the general public are aware of hydrogen. How does the hydrogen grab become better recognized versus the binary diesel versus petrol versus electric vehicles debate? Good.
Well, yeah, short answer to that one is get it out there, show it, kick the tires, literally, and people will buy into it. I think surveys have been done, haven't they, that people are ready for it. You know, anecdotally, people catch the hydrogen bus in London before the buses, that kind of thing. So there's, yeah, people are ready for it, if I could put it that way. But yeah, there's no substitute to building on all this expertise to getting it out there on the ground. And then things might happen more quickly. And just answering the other question quickly, I read the first part, emerging tech, and I thought, I've got an answer to that. And then I read the second bit and I thought, no, I've no idea about enzymatic biofuel cells. But as John says, somebody in Wales does. You know, we've got expertise in that area, and we've got expertise in nuclear hydrogen catalysis. And it's remarkable, really, how much expertise there is. It might not say hydrogen on the box, but there are so many complementary activities. But what I will say after reading that first part was, we've done a little bit of collaboration with FinTech Wales in terms of how these worlds can collide. And what I mean there is you've got an infrastructure layer, which is comprehensive. It needs to be expanded within Wales. You've got the kit, you know, the stuff, the electrolyzers, the industry, the fuel cells and other stuff. You've got a digital infrastructure. And the early conversations we've been having with them is about peer-to-peer transactions. So you've got a financial infrastructure from that emerging technology side of things. So it's all very exciting. It's all very disruptive. It's all very distributed, hopefully. But yeah, we'll be looking to further those conversations with FinTech Wales as an example.
Thank you very much, Guto. And there's been a slight addition here, which says the scary bit was the implantable fuel cells that generate power from your blood, which I think just illustrates the enormous breadth of the hydrogen opportunities, which nicely takes me back to Stefan and the KTN for a few closing words.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ron. Yeah, and thanks, everybody. The timekeeping of all our speakers today is second to none, to be honest. So that's fantastic. Yeah, just got a couple of minutes, and I'm not sure I can add too much wisdom to what's been said already. I just thought it was interesting, something Charlie said there about the emerging tech playing the role, not just in hydrogen, but in renewables in general. And I think it's worth mentioning, you know, in Wales, I mean, my limited knowledge, but many trips across, you know, Ceredigion and areas like that, where you've got vast wind farms. You know, there's going to be a big role to play hydrogen in terms of storage on that side, and there's obviously a lot of work to do there. So, yeah, huge emerging tech opportunities. So I think really it's just a thank you to all our speakers. Thank you to everyone for joining. It's certainly amazing to hear of all the activity in Wales, but I think people would agree with me that to hear that there's real substance, real physical activity behind things like the pathway. So it's great to see and hear that. We're a bit tight for time, but I think we're okay. So I hope you enjoyed the session. I think, John, maybe you mentioned about tomorrow there is a session on the South Wales Industrial Cluster about at 2:15. So there'll definitely be some interest for people there. Also a bit of a KTN plug, but at 11:45, my colleague Mark Ray will be hosting a session to do with decarbonisation of ports and harbours. Again, there's a lot of overlap there, so please tune in for that. But other than that, thank you very much to all our speakers. Thanks for joining us, and hope you have a good afternoon.
And thank you, Stefan, and thank you to Louise, who's been keeping us all straight and narrow behind the scenes. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for joining the Emerging Tech Fest. Join us again on our virtual live sessions, or watch us on playback anytime, anywhere.